Welcome back, guys. Next up, we've got Motley Crue's what I've described as the forgotten album. It is in so many ways. It's a true anomaly. Is this one? It's from 1994. It's the only Motley Crue album to feature a vocalist other than Vince Neil. It was a fabulous John Corabi. At the time, from being in the bands like The Scream and other bands who were quite well known at the time. Not only was he a vocalist for Motley Crue on this album, he was also a second guitarist, a rhythm guitarist, which was quite the novelty for Mick Mars at the time, because it was the first time in Motley Crue's career where he could sort of flex his guitaring muscles and sort of branch out rather than being the single standalone guitarist. So much to say about this album. It is, as I say, quite an anomaly in terms of it stands the test of time better than any other Motley Crue album. Yet it's probably the least talked about, generally, mainly because Vince Neil's not in the lineup. So let's go through some few factoids. So they retained Bob Rock as producer, who produced the album prior to this. Dr. Feelgood, fantastic producer, one of my favourite producers of all time. Got a real unique, thick sounding production as Bob Rock stuff really has. So there'd been a 5-year gap, hence Vince Neil departing. They had some sort of bust up after the Dr. Feelgood tour, and I think the story goes John Corabi was wanting to employ Nicky Sixx, the bass player, in some of his stuff, and Nicky Sixx had sort of heard some of Corabi's vocals, and I think at the time Corabi was unaware that there was a vacancy in the band with Vince Neil leaving, and things moved on, and before you know it, they more or less offered him the gig, which he took. So the problem is with this album, during that 5-year gap, the entire landscape of music had changed. In a way, I could call it ahead of its time, but also behind its time as well. It was so bizarre. They'd moved on so much musically from anything they'd done prior and anything they'd done subsequently, to be honest with you. It really is that good. But the problem is grunge had landed. So it were never gonna, for want of a better phrase, sell particularly well. And I think that's what really hampered it. But they were dogged by all sorts of other issues as well. Post-release of this, they had a massive fallout with MTV, which really hurt airtime, certainly video time. They had an absolute disastrous tour, which initially started as stadiums, then dropped to theatres, and then apparently went right down to clubs, and then ultimately cancelled. And it was just absolute hellish sort of time for Motley Crue, and it really shouldn't have been, because musically this album is so competent, as I say. It doesn't even sound like Motley Crue, but in a good way, if that makes sense. Gone is the sort of any reference to hair metal, not just in the music but in the lyrics, was sort of like really matured and grown up. Again, mainly from Corabi's influence, certainly in the lyrics, without a doubt. As I say, it was far more experimental and diverse than anything they've done before or since. We've got so much going on. We've even got ballads, orchestral overdubs, You've got this real heavy, thick drop D tuning throughout the whole album, which, you know, just so powerful. Just chuggy guitars, brilliant lengthy tracks. So I guess from a criticism aspect, we have got a lot of overly long tracks on it, I guess, if we're being critical. And there is some cheese on there and weak tracks, but for the whole, it's, you know, it's real top grade stuff. It really is. Standout tracks for me personally, obviously, Hooligan's Holiday. I remember the video for when it first landed, back in Top of the Pops days. Video's so fucking cool, but that track, absolutely loved it, played it to death. We've got an excellent track called Hammered on there, which I believe are one of the first ones written for this album, by Karabi. We've got another sort of powerful, fast track. I guess, yeah, I was going to say, so Smoke the Sky is probably the nearest thing on this album to Kickstart My Heart. Very similar in that sort of paciness to it. But even better, it's just a fabulous track is that. We've got a track called Misunderstood, which sort of broaches a very delicate subject. I think it's about child abuse, but it's quite melodic, real experimental things going on in that song. And then we've got Drift Away, another sort of melodic closing track to the album. Just really good. I just wish that it got the plaudits that it deserved. You very rarely hear of anything to do with this album these days. This particular copy I've got is out of print now, so this got released in sort of two versions of this. They did a red literally identical but in red font, which is slightly easy to get hold of than the yellow, but even the red ones you don't see often now, so it is quite a scarce album, and it's it's worth digging out though. It really is. I've even got the so I have literally had this album since 1994, believe it or not. Just, I'd love to know how many times I've played this. But this were the if you wanted like a flyer. So we've got to remember it's pre-internet, so you were still posting stuff and what have you. But this was for like a mail away mini EP, if you like, called Quaternary, where each of the band members played all the instruments on their particular track. Just a 4 or 5, yeah, I think like 4. I think it was 4 tracks, and you got a bonus track, didn't you? But yeah, that's cool. But yeah, so yeah, worth checking this one out, guys. If you are a Motley Crue fan, if you're a Motley Crue fan, you'll probably know about it anyway. But really holds up even today, in today's sort of landscape of utter shite music that's out there. Yeah, but this is a good one, really is. Cheers for watching, guys. I will be back soon.